Hello and welcome everyone to the third video as part of the Recursion Primer series. Today we are going to see how to print numbers from 1 to a given n. So in this we have taken n as 50 and we simply have to print 1 to 50 without using loops. So that is why recursion is coming into picture. If we were using loops, it was very simple. Use a for loop, start from 1, continue till 50 and print it out. But now we have to think of doing this without using loop. So let's see how can we do this. So n is 15. So what is the first thing we do? We first think of a base case and then we arrive at the main body. What can be the base case in this? If I'm starting from 1 and I have to stop at 50, means my base case should be whenever I arrive at the n, that is where it should stop. Okay. That is going to be my base case, like stop at n wherever the n is. Okay. Next, in the main body, what we have to do is we have to print every number starting from 1. Now think about this. How do we ensure that 1 is printed first? Here we have access to n that is equal to 50. We don't have access to any variable which is equal to 1. You might think of, okay, let's have one variable I equal to 1 over here and then we can start from here. The problem will be if we take I equal to 1 over here, since the method is going to be called again and again, this I cannot be manipulated. This I will become 1 every time. So it will be an unused variable kind of a thing. Every time I is becoming 1 and it is of my no use. If I have to manipulate variables, I usually pass it in the parameters of the method. If it is getting reinitialized to 1, it is of no use to me. So I clearly cannot use I equal to 1. So another thing we can think of is, okay, it's a static method. So maybe we can have a global variable. So we can have a global variable like a static int in which we can say I equal to 1. And then since this is global and it is not dependent on the scope of this method, we can manipulate this number. So if we do this, that will still work. So we can try doing this and then we can see some other ways of solving this. So first let's see if I is equal to 1. Okay, now I have access to a number which is starting from 1. So I'll say if I is lesser than equal to n, then I can simply print it out. So I is 1, 1 is less than equal to 50, yes. So print out 1. After that we have to manipulate this I variable, means we have to increment this variable. So I'll do I plus plus. This will keep on happening till I reach 50. So 50 less than equal to 50 will print it and become I plus plus. Again when I will come in here and this condition will become false, then we have to think what we have to do. Nothing. We just have to say if it is not satisfying this condition, just return, because I have already printed till 50. What else do I want? Okay. But we have to make sure this is happening every time. So then what we have to do? We have to call this method again. So we'll call this method. Now the fun part. What do we pass in here? If we pass in n over here, then my n will remain constant. If I manipulate my n will change over here. What do we want? We don't want to manipulate the n because I am comparing I, which is equal to 1, against a fixed number, which is n. If I manipulate my n, in every function call, the n will change. So this condition will not hold good. So I can simply call this method again and again and make sure this check is happening and print it out. Okay, fair enough. So this was the main body actually. Nothing much, is just a method call. So let's try to run this. So we have been able to print from 1 to 50. Okay. So if I don't want to use any global variables, what other options do I have? So let's say I don't want to use this. So always remember, when we are doing questions, when we are solving questions using recursively, there are two things to do. One is we supply something at a global level and then we manipulate that from the outside. Or we pass in something as an argument, as an additional argument, which can be manipulated. So in this, if I don't want to declare a static global variable, I can pass in as an argument the start pointer kind of a thing, a starting variable. So in this, along with this, I can say my start is 1. If I want to change my start, let's say if I want to print from 5 to 50, I'll change my start variable to 5. So I can manipulate over here. Now when I have access to the variable as a method parameter, I can change this variable to my own use case. So as I commented this, now we'll see how do we manipulate this. So now start is 1. Okay, so I can print start, whatever the start is 1. But we have to have some condition. So we'll say same thing like we were doing. We'll say if start is less than equal to n, we will simply print it out, whatever the start is. Okay. If it is not, if at any given point in time the start variable is greater than n, then we will return. Okay. Now comes the main body part. So this is the body. So what we are going to do, we have to do a recursion, means we have to call this method. So when we are calling this method, notice we are again not going to touch our n. N is going to be our benchmark. So n will remain as is. We'll play around with this variable which is start. So we'll say start plus 1. So we are manipulating this method parameter that we got and then applying whatever logic we are trying to apply, and we are keeping this n untouched. So in this way, this is the method, this is the variation number 2. Apart from having a global variable, we can also supply an additional parameter and try to manipulate that. So now let's try to run this. Same thing. So these are the two ways in which we can write recursive functions. One, by adding some additional parameter and manipulate that, or using some global variable like we have seen earlier. Or the third way is a bit tricky, which we will see in upcoming videos. Instead of using global or instead of using an additional parameter, we can also try to do some logic inside the body of the function such that we can achieve the same result. But it was not applicable in this case. So this is about printing the numbers from 1 to 50. What if I want to print it in reverse order? So we'll see that. So if I want to print it in reverse order, if I have to print it in reverse, means I have to start printing whatever the n is. N is equal to 50. So first we have to print 50. But what is going to be my base case over here? From 50 I have to go till 1. Means if my n is greater than 0, we can print it. Like 50 is greater than 0, like then all the way up to 1. 1 is also greater than 0. The moment it becomes from 1, it goes to 0, then we have to stop. So we can say if n greater than 0, we can return, we can print whatever n is. This is my base case. Okay. Otherwise, if it is just breaking this condition, we can say return, just simply return, because we don't have anything to return. And the main body, so in this we will call this method only. But here, instead of n, like we were keeping n constant over here, there. So here we are putting the n only in the if condition. Since the n we are putting and we are trying to compare that with another integer called 0, so now we can safely manipulate the n variable. What we should do, if 50 is printed, then we have to do n minus 1, means 49 should be printed, and this will go all the way up to 1. And then when this condition is false, I would have already printed all the numbers from 50 to 1. That's it. So let's try to run this. So I'll comment this out and run this. So we have been able to print all the numbers from in the reverse order. So that is what I wanted to discuss in this video. Very basic questions, printing of numbers, which we easily do using loops. But I wanted to build upon the recursive way of thinking this by breaking down this entire problem into smaller subproblems and then trying out different variations of the problem, so that we can solidify our understanding that, okay, whenever we have to apply recursion, we have to think like this. Recursion is something which is not necessarily being done in every question. Like every question that you are doing, you need not write a recursive solution for that. Recursion is something which you have to develop a thought process. Once you understand how to develop a thought process, how to think recursively, it can be easily applied on very bigger, complex problems. But if you don't understand the basics, these questions, whatever I am doing as part of this series, these are very basic questions. It might sound very simple, very easy. But the moment we have to apply recursion, then we have to go back and sit and think how to do this. So this is the tricky part of recursion comes into play. And as and when we do more and more questions, we will become quite efficient at doing this. So that is the goal of this series. So please stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you guys are looking forward to watching this content. And thank you so much for watching today's video. Do let me know in the comments below if you have any doubts or any suggestions. Thank you.